Hello, my name is Pastor Scott. I am the lead pastor at Coleman Faith United Methodist Church in Coleman, Michigan. Um, I'm very pleased to be with you today on the Sunday edition of Extraordinary Connection as we continue to find the great benefits of being a part of a connectional ministry within the United Methodist Church. So, our devotion today is coming from my truck, actually. My truck is a 1986 Jeep Comanche, which is older than me. It's something that is a bit of a joy and a burden of love in my own life. There's a lot of things that happen with this truck that frustrate me. There's a lot of things that happen with this truck that bring me great joy. But this truck is always breaking down. There's always something wrong with it. And usually it's something very, very silly when I get to the point of finding it. Recently, this truck of mine broke down again, and this was after I had thought I had finally got it running. I had it running in the driveway, and I got my wife and brought her out to the truck, and we were going to have its maiden voyage because it finally was working. And I pulled the truck out into the road and drove probably 3 or 4 blocks away when all of a sudden the truck just stopped. There was a big bang and it just stopped in its tracks. It wouldn't move. And as I went underneath the truck and started looking around, as my wife sat in the cab just shaking her head at me, I found that a bolt, a small bolt, a bolt this big, this is the size of a guitar pick. See, it's not too big. A bolt this size had broken off, had sheared off, and now my truck wouldn't run anymore. This was on the drive shaft, the rear drive shaft for my truck. So with this one thing wrong, my truck wouldn't move. And I think we can use this as a bit of a metaphor that sometimes we place so much trust into one little thing, or we put one person in such a critical role that if that role fails, or if that thing fails, then we as the church, the truck trying to move forward, just can't go anywhere. I think this is very apt for leadership nowadays because we tend to put people in a lot of different roles thinking that, they will fit into whatever size hole we put them into, and that their gifts in ministry are going to just apply across the board. We do this all the time in the church. We see one person who's willing to serve on a committee. We see one person who is really gung-ho for this one area of ministry, and we say, okay, great, we're going to put you in it. And then we start putting them in more and more and more and more things, believing that they are the only option in the church. I think pastors can learn a lot from a broken down truck. And I want to share with us a reading from Romans 12, verses 3 through 8. This is a very familiar text. Paul had written to the Romans here, but also it's very similar to 1 Corinthians 12 and Philippians 2, this understanding of one body but many functions. Hear these words. For by the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, not to think of yourselves more highly than you ought to think, but to think with sober judgment, each according to the measure of faith that God has assigned. For as in one body we have many members, and not all the members have the same function. So we, who are many, are one body in Christ, and individually we are members one of another. We have gifts that differ according to the grace given to us: prophecy in proportion to faith, ministry in ministering, the teacher in teaching, the exhorter in exhortation, the giver in generosity, the leader in diligence, the compassionate in cheerfulness. Just like this little bolt, we have a role that we are to fulfill in the church. We have something that we are called into. We have a very specific function that when we find it and we are being used to the best of our ability, We know it. We feel it. We feel at home. We feel comfortable in the ministry that we are doing. I could take this one bolt and I could find another place in my Jeep to use it, but it wouldn't fit fully. It wouldn't do the necessary tasks that it's called to do. This bolt was also in the right place at the right time. It just wasn't tightened down. And I think in order to be used fully, in order to truly live into our calling, truly live into the grace and the gift that God has given us, we need to not only be placed in the right place at the right time, but we need to be encouraged. We need to be tightened down. We need to be put in a place to succeed, given the necessary resources to succeed. Because we are all called into something, and we are all called into this ministry of the church to bring God's kingdom ever closer. So as we go from this place and go into the rest of our day, let us dive deeper into what our calling is. What thing are we really meant to be doing in this church? And are we doing it? And if we're in a position of leadership or a position where we delegate or encourage others, are we helping people find where they belong? Are we helping people to live into what they are supposed to be doing with their lives? May the grace and the love and the peace of Jesus the Christ reside with you as we go on throughout this rest of the season that we are in. Amen.